Russia captures or maybe salvages a Leopard 2A6 while the Ukrainians hit its oldest ship on the Crimean Peninsula. At the same time, the Russians gain additional ground, but there's bad news for them on the horizon as the long-range ATACMS are on their way to Ukraine. This and more in this situation report. Before we start off, just a quick update. The 5th car for emergency evacuation is on the way to Ukraine. Those are off-road vehicles, SUVs and something like this, to save the lives of heavily injured persons, civilians as well as military in Ukraine. They are being brought to a central place where the regular ambulances can drive, but of course for outside of roads they need different cars, and they are the 5th one that was donated is now in Ukraine. Let's switch over to the developments. In Kharkiv we have a Russian air attack striking the television tower, and as you can see, the top of it broke off and collapsed, crashed onto the ground. From what I read, there are communication issues now in Ukraine, as the tower was also used for cell phones, not just for television, but the details there aren't completely clear yet. North of the Seversky Donetsk, the fighting is continuing. I have some geolocalization, but everything behind the known front lines. So from my point of view, nothing has changed on the ground. No change in territory that I can confirm. South of the Seversky Donetsk, we have a minor change north of Bilohorivka. There is a video of Russian soldiers being defeated by Ukrainians that are in this position here. So up here. This means that if a position there is filled with Ukrainian soldiers, this should mean that the Ukrainians hold this, so the green area should probably extend somewhere to this area, at least if that video isn't fairly old, but it doesn't seem to be that way. Further south, the fighting around Chasiv Yar is continuing. The Russians supposedly want to capture it by May 9th, but as of now, I cannot confirm any change in territory. There are a few geolocalizations as well, but I do not see that they have entered Chasiv Yar in any additional area. The fighting is continuing, but apparently not decisive as of now. South of it, it's somewhat different. We observed the Russians advancing along the railroad line here, and in the last situation report I had shown you that they were in the southeasternmost part. Now they more or less control the whole southern part of Ocheretine, south of the railroad, but they have advanced north of it as well. And the really bad news here is that isn't just because they were fighting so successfully. This is a pro-Ukrainian channel who is referencing here a Ukrainian soldier on the front line, and according to what I understand, that means the units that were tasked with defending that area basically abandoned it. Now, this can be lost in translation at some point, but from my understanding, it's not like they were defeated and had to withdraw. It's that they decided to give up their positions without being under direct pressure from the enemy. Obviously a sign of very bad morale on the Ukrainian unit tasked with this. After this became clear, the Ukrainians sent the 47th Mechanized Brigade, that's the one with the Bradley, to basically plug the hole in the front line. We've seen some videos of counterattacks by this brigade with their Bradleys, but the thing is, this brigade is at the very least since the Ukrainian counteroffensive last year on the front line. They're exhausted, they've suffered casualties, and they were in the process of getting withdrawn for refit, repair, replenishment. And now they have been sent back to the front line, which will be devastating for their morale as well. But at least as of now, this has helped. Further south, the fighting is continuing. The Russians keep up the pressure in Semenivka, but from what I read from the Ukrainians at Berdichy and in the area of Umanske, the fighting has somewhat subsided. So as of now, I cannot see any change in territory here. Neither can I confirm something in Pervomaiske. Krasnohorivka, the fighting is also continuing. The map here, at least to my understanding, is wrong. This here should be more or less under Russian control as of now. But the change overall, the situation hasn't worsened for the Ukrainians in Krasnohorivka itself. Further south, the Russians gained additional ground in the area west of Marinka. We have the Russians gained some tree lines here where they managed to extend further, and they've lost they gained Novomykhailivka. They captured it by now. The Ukrainians, this was a Ukrainian mill blogger showing that Novomykhailivka is captured, and an area south of it here, roughly this area here. In the last situation report, the Russians had more or less a position along this line here. Over the last 2 days, they captured all of this. By now, it seems like Novomykhailivka is fully under Russian control. There's a slight chance that somewhere here in the Dacha area, there's still a Ukrainian presence. At least I do not have a visual confirmation here yet, even though we had it in the eastern part, so it seems fairly unlikely. And at least through some Ukrainian sources, they are saying they have withdrawn from Novomykhailivka, saying that, basically meaning that they should have lost it completely as of now. Further south, no change in territory, but we do have something here at Velika Novosilka at the Oblast border. The Russians did a counterattack or an attack into the area of Urushaine. The geolocalization was there, showing them disembark and entering this building here. This building is that, so a previously held Ukrainian position. The armored vehicle was destroyed on its retreat though, and we have no idea what happened to the infantry there. So it's possible that by now the Ukrainians have recaptured that position. It's possible that they were defeated and the Ukrainians have not captured it. So as of now, we cannot really say how much it has changed, but probably it would have to be in the gray area now. This, at least the southernmost houses here of Urushaine. As we can see, it's a little built-up area, but somewhat separated from the rest of the town. Further west at Orikhiv, there are some reports that the Russians have gained additional area in Robotine on the westernmost road, but from what I've seen, it doesn't seem to be any change that I have confirmed. Now, I think in Robotine, the pro-Ukrainian deep steppe map is also incorrect. This area here, I showed you that the Russians were already up here. So at the very least, this area should be gray area further north here as well. And it's unlikely that this is still Ukrainian held at this point. But overall, I do not see a massive change from what I've seen. It's just reconfirming that the Ukrainians lost positions on the westernmost road of Robotine, as I've reported to you in the last situation reports. Along the Dnipro, no change that I can confirm. So fighting is continuing there, but the overall situation has not changed. In Sevastopol, though, we do have news. We have a video that shows a burning ship in the harbor of Sevastopol, as you can see here, and it was identified as the Komuna. Komuna is an interesting ship as it's dating back to Tsarist times. So this is from, I think it was laid down in 1911, launched in 1913 and put into service in 1915 during World War I. This is a salvage ship and submarine support ship, a catamaran. And as you can see here, it has an opening in the center where a submarine could be repaired, where maintenance could happen, etc. And as you can see, it's carrying submarines and it's carrying cranes. So it's not just able to repair and support submarines, but it's also able to salvage something from the bottom of the ocean. And there it has been used in this war. There are reports that it was at the place where the Moskva sank to salvage secret classified things from the wreckage, as well as bodies that were left behind. So the Komuna was now hit. Now the damage of it is unclear as of now. There are some satellite pictures indicating that it might have vanished. I couldn't really see much on these satellite pictures, so I cannot confirm it as of now. It's probably damaged, that much is for sure. To what degree is unclear though. Obviously fire is a massive danger for a ship, but how long it has burned and at which parts and how much it will impede future operations is a different story. But as of now, it is confirmed that it was on fire, and the Ukrainians claim it was on fire after one of their own strikes. It's still of use despite being over 100 years old, as it can do repairs on submarines and do salvage operations, gain, for instance, objects that from ships that were sunk that can then be repaired, reused. It could salvage ammunition from a sunken transport ship, etc. So losing that will hurt the Russians in the long run. In troop generation, we have some news. The Russians are working on the Shahid drones that they are building in Tatarstan. They are actually replacing the 50 kilo warhead with a 90 kilo warhead, almost doubling its power, and it's going to have they are working on warheads with shrapnel and with thermobaric use as well. The Shahid in itself is more or less capable of tactical usage, so usage along the front line. The Russians mostly have used it more in a strategic sense, striking infrastructure, striking power plants, relay stations, things like this. But in general, it is capable of supporting troops on the ground. And here we see that the work on new warheads will probably lead to the Russians using them in this regard as well. So an issue for Ukraine in the near future. In international support, though, there is a problem coming for the Russians. The U.S. Senate Intelligence Committee chairperson, Senator Mark Warner, said that the first military aid, including ATACMS, will come at the end of the week already to Ukraine, if the Senate is agreeing tomorrow. And on the 24th, on Wednesday, Biden signs the law, and both seems to be certain as of now. So that would mean that according to the Intelligence Committee chairperson, the first military aid will come at the end of the week, including ATACMS. And this time it's going to be the so-called long-range ATACMS. Now, this is still just 300 kilometers, not a clear long-range missile by any normal nomenclature, but so far, the ATACMS that were delivered were only 165 kilometers. Now it's 300, and that means that basically everything of occupied Ukraine will be in range for those. We can see it here. And this, if we take a 300 kilometer, as you can have here, see here, and let's say we put it in Kherson in some alleyway a little bit hidden, so it's not directly visible, and you see it's basically everything but the easternmost tip that can be hit. And if we go somewhere south here, maybe let's say the town of Orikhiv hidden somewhere there, and you have the rest of the Crimean Peninsula fully in strike range, and obviously the rest as well. Now, the US will likely not give permission to use them against Russian targets inside of Russia. So harbors, bridges, airfields, etc. will probably be out of the question, but everything inside of occupied Ukraine will thus soon, and probably already at the end of the week, be in range for the Russians, for the Ukrainian attacks. No ammo dump, no bridge, no command center, nothing will be safe from the ATACMS coming soon. The numbers that are being sent, some are being spread that are fantastic, that seem unreasonable, so I'm not going to talk in detail until we know something better. But the latest news was just a couple of minutes ago that supposedly some heavy explosions happened in Mariupol and something is burning here. So there was a fresh attack by the Ukrainians. We don't know what yet, but one thing is clear. The Ukrainians can now dig into their reserves as they know that help will come. Everything they held back for the worst case possible now can probably be released and used. So this might be some shorter range ATACMS that was so far being kept just for the worst case that is now being used. The new ones are likely not there yet because the law isn't signed yet, but big aid is coming for Ukraine, and that should help Ukraine a lot in the near future, at least depending on the numbers. Obviously, 20, 30 will not make the same impression as 1,000 would, but we'll have to see how close the numbers come to a 4-digit number or whether it's going to be in the low 3rd digit. Anyways, the Russians have salvaged a Leopard 2A6. Now, they showed this video here, and as we can see, this is really a burnt out wreckage. Now, you can see here, this is clear fire damage that is visible. So technically, I guess we could talk about capturing, but it's more salvaging a wreck. It will be useful for the Russians regardless. Like, we shouldn't downplay it completely. They won't be able to put it into service. They will still learn something, but the overall specifications are more or less known to the Russians. It's a difference, though, if you estimate it or if you can confirm what your expectations are. And it will obviously be a propaganda tool. It will be displayed in Moscow and later probably go into one of their collections, probably Kubinka, as a war trophy. So overall, the loss is not a new one. It was identified at Avdiivka, and it shouldn't surprise anyone if the Ukrainians use a weapon system that some of them will get lost, and if they lose territory, then the wreckage will fall into Russian hands. So overall, not much of a surprise, and the biggest downside of this is that the tank doesn't work anymore, and the Ukrainians have lost it quite some time ago. And obviously, the propaganda effect isn't great either. But it's not a disaster overall. That Russia will gain some top secret technology that will help improve them or something is completely overblown. So it's unpleasant, but it's not a disaster. Regardless, that was already it from me for now. If you like this short report, please give it a thumbs up. It really helps with the algorithm. Leave a comment in the comment section. What do you think about the current developments? And if you're new here, I would like to invite you to subscribe to the channel and hit the bell icon so you don't miss future videos. If you want to support the channel, this channel is only possible because of the support of viewers like you, then you can do so by the means in the description. Thank you very much to everyone already doing that. But that's it from me for now. Thank you for watching, and I'll be back.